All right, we're live. Welcome to episode 3 of our PSU Turf Happy Hour. Trying to do something a little different than everybody else. I'm not sure how successful this is or has been, but we're not getting together outside of these Zoom meetings. So sometimes it's nice for us to just be able to chat with each other and see what's going on. First episode, we did POA. Second episode, we did some NFL field managers. And I thought that as we're in the middle of the summer and some students are and some aren't doing their internships, I thought we would pull together a group of people, including faculty, superintendents, sports field managers, and current and former student, as well as our faculty here that are either on internships or have done internships, and talk a little bit about the diversity of them. Dan, I'm going to throw you under the bus first, and everybody can introduce themselves the first time they talk if they want to, but this is informal and I'm not too worried about it. I don't do anything with sports turf, barely at all. So this is a McNitt and a Dan Douglas thing, but tell me what you do for your interns and how you look at the students that are, trying to become professional sports field managers. Like, what's unique about not just your situation, but sports turf, I would say.
Sure. I'm Dan Douglas. I've been with the Reading Fighting Phils now for 30 years. And this is the first year I didn't have an intern because of COVID. Actually, it's the first year in 30 years I was going to have a seasonal assistant, and that lasted 2 weeks. So my crew now is off, and I found them all great jobs.
But you didn't get an intern because they wouldn't come, or your company said, no, we're not going to hire anybody?
Well, with this year, we twisted around one or two candidates that I talked to. It turned out it was easier for me to make a seasonal assistant out of a guy that was in the area that was in the turf program and had to take some time off because of financial situation, and COVID hit, so it all got ugly. But in a typical year, interns are a little difficult for us in baseball, only because of the timing. And until they get to us in first or second week of May, we're already about a third of the way through the season. So my typical plan is to get some Penn State Berks people that are close to Reading involved while they're working or going to school at Penn State Berks. And then over the years, we've certainly had interns from Penn State, and we have a program in place where they get on board, and we get them the training involved for the next 3 months or so. So weird year, weird times, but typically we do have a program in place where they come in mid-May, and we get them into the fold of things. And then in baseball, they spend most of their internship not even dealing with grass. We're talking about the skinned areas and mound repair and home plate and bullpens and all that kind of stuff, way more than what it takes to grow grass. But certainly we touch on that also. Anything else you want me to add? Andy, you want to talk about sports turf internships in general?
Well, I guess the big thing about sports turf and golf that are different is, well, timing is a big deal, but secondarily, housing. So, a lot of golf courses offer housing and maybe even a partial meal plan. And that's a little bit more rare in baseball. Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about, what you do for housing, or you're hoping to get kids who are fairly local coming out of Berks?
It usually works better when we get somebody local, because we've been back and forth on housing. Now the team will employ 10, 15 interns, but the general sports management internship business, they're honestly a dime a dozen compared to the specialty that we have in sports turf or in turf in general. So it's always a struggle. I always try to try to get housing somehow, some way, if it's needed, and we will find a way for the right candidate. But in general, we don't like to deal with housing. So yeah, that is always a sticking point, and it's always a sticking point with the front office interns. My interns usually generally make a little bit more money than the general front office interns, only because it is more of a specialty and it's more difficult to get an intern.
And we have that problem in pro baseball, and especially in pro football. There are certain teams that say, hey, we don't pay interns. Like we have all these, you know, broadcasting interns or whatever all they are, and they're like, we don't pay them. So, you know, not that many people are on the call. So I can say, you know, there are some professional sports teams that won't call them interns. They'll say, well, I just need some summer help. And so they'll just hire them as summer help. And there's all kinds of different arrangements. So I think the overall internship program in sports turf is a little less developed. It's there. There are people hungry for interns, but just because the way it's structured, I think housing's an issue. Most of the time, when we have somebody go into a pro football facility, they'll, you know, rent a bedroom in an apartment that is shared with one of the younger crew members. And there are some facilities that have some arrangements with short-term leases with a nearby college. You are in an urban area typically, so there, you know, there are opportunities to get summer sublets near colleges, et cetera. What's become a lot more popular in football now is to take a 6-month internship. So we have an awful lot of students now who will start in May, which works out pretty well for football, and stay the whole way through till January. And that seems to be working out. So that has become more and more popular among our undergrad students.
Andy, how many you're in touch? You run the program. So what would you say the percentage of our students that are interested in sports turf versus golf?
Well, it depends on the year. So a year ago, we had 50% of our BS students were sports turf. Typically, we were ranging like 20%. I mean, when I first started, it was 1 or 3. But lately, we've been averaging just about half, 40%. 50%, and then all of a sudden, no, you'll hit a year where it drops back down to 20%. But the numbers keep going up. The opportunities keep going up too.
There were a few places that would actually have housing available, like the Brewers. I think they would have a place there where all the interns would live together, and then they would come in and do that as well. And there was a couple of others.
Fenway has a deal set up with a local university that's like right across the street. They have empty dorms. So there are some places that have housing. It's a good point, Brad. But there are many who don't.
And I think the last time when we had the last meeting we did, it just seems like they don't employ as many people during the season as like a golf course would, where you might have 20 or 30 people, and sports field might have, you know, a handful, I guess. So that might hinder some.
So when you look at the sports turf industry, I mean, dollar-wise, it's as big as golf, but it's way more diffuse. I mean, you know, it's lots and lots of little places. And, you know, there are colleges who take interns, but many don't. And there's some minor league facilities like Dan's and some others that do, but some don't. When you're looking at the pros, you know, you have, 32 facilities in the NFL and a similar number in baseball, and a number that's slightly lower than that, I believe, in MLS, which is picking up, and they're beginning to take interns too. So the opportunities are there, but you have to work at it a little bit more. You have to go beat the bushes a little bit more in sports turf.
Hey, Dan, question for you. In those 30 years of having interns, did you ever have a hybrid situation where you shared that intern with a golf course, or possibly did you have an intern who was on a golf course in one season and then had shifted to you? And if so, what were the pros and cons of that?
Well, yes to all the above. Over 30 years, we've done some of that. And actually, the guy that I have is going to be my seasonal assistant now. I hooked him up with a golf course. And when we start playing some amateur games here in the next couple of weeks, he's going to be golf course all day and sports turf all night. We have lights, so we can just keep going. You golf course guys, you go home when it gets, 3:30. Anyway, but so he's going to go without sleep for a while. But yes, we've done that. We've shared with golf courses. I actually love when guys work with golf courses before they get to me. They already have some knowledge of equipment, and I don't have to teach them what a clutch is or a righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but I've done all that too. So yeah, we build programs. I've always been building programs. I love when I get a Penn State Berks guy and we just work around his school schedule, and then try not to schedule evening classes, that type of stuff. I don't think there are any cons to the difference between somebody that's had golf experience or whatever. I mean, I've had interns that have gone off and having great careers in golf right now. And I've had golf guys that come here and been sports turf ever since. So, it's just the right fit for you.
Hey,
You thinking
Dan,
about doing something like that, Curtis?
I had heard about a couple of other people doing similar things in different cities, and we have the Arizona Diamondbacks right down the street. And I thought maybe there might be an opportunity for that down the line, because we're an 18-hole facility, and housing is a challenge for us. Obviously, at some of my other facilities, I had multiple courses, bigger budgets, and housing was no problem. We fit it into the budget, easy peasy. But now I've got to kind of come up with some new ways to offset some of those costs. And that was one idea.
Hey, Dan, can you talk a little bit about what Nicole Sherry's trying at Baltimore Orioles with spring training and then coming up there for the summer and trying to make arrangements like that? Are you familiar with that at all?
This is just in general what Major League Baseball is trying to do, and taxi squads and all that. Is that what you're referring to? From here
Yeah,
on
and
out?
I think, yes. And so Nicole was looking at seasonal, instead of just having some seasonal employees, being able to employ them year round by sending them to Clearwater or somewhere else and making.
I see.
She also tried to get some unique thing together with Casey at Trinity Forest. It was going to be like a joint internship where they'd spend some period on golf and then go up to Sherry. I don't know if that worked out or not, but I think they were trying to do that too.
Well, I think the whole world, when it blew up, everything's kind of out the window. I mean, all these ideas that we've had in the past are kind of blowing up. I don't know where baseball is right now, and every day I'm getting texts from this team's sponsoring or hosting a spring training, and this one's hosting a taxi squad, and then it goes away and it comes back. So that dust hasn't settled on that one yet. But there are. I mean, certainly, the spring training facilities have employees, and then they can certainly share them with the major league once they get going. Because once minor leagues kick in in Florida, they don't need the help they would need around there in spring training. And we don't do that so much with the grounds crew right now. I know us, the Phillies, our clubhouse attendant will be down Clearwater all the time until the Phillies come out of spring training. So it would certainly work also with grounds crews, mostly because the team will own their facility in spring training for the most part. So that can happen.
We do have opportunities, for instance, in Pittsburgh. If you work for the Steelers, you kind of work there all day, and then you can go work game days with the Pirates, so you get a little bit of baseball experience as well. And they'll sort of share guys back and forth. And again, you're young; they don't need any sleep, right? So work constantly.
What's for sports turf? I know it varies probably at every facility, but what are a typical hours per week for sports turf?
Well,
people?
I think Dan can answer that for baseball, right? It depends whether the team's in town or away.
It's 100 hours when the team's at home, and I give guys off the couple days in between there. We're busy the day before a homestand, the day after the homestand, and during the games it's 16-hour days. And then you could go a week if the team's on the road. I mean, there's a pretty good chance we're going to have other events too. So there's 5.5 months out of the year that it's go get them. So it can be some crazy hours. So we have to be creative in finding time off.
Dan,
Curtis,
do you have a checklist of skills that you'd like to have each intern or the interns, I guess, master or learn by the time they're done when they get done at your facility?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time taking care of skinned areas, dirt areas. It's kind of it's a combination of science and art and learning that. And I think I probably concentrate on that more, only because they can get more turf experience other places. So a checklist, I just hope they're a little bit better than when they showed up, and that they have real life experience rather than something that they might learn in a textbook or a webinar. or whatever you guys call classes now. So I like to, just growth, and you see an incredible amount of growth even 5 months or 3 months that I get them. So
Would it be helpful to have like a checklist of skills that you could actually sign off on by the end of the semester, or end of the term, or the internship, to help them just kind of at least be able to identify these are some definite skills that we learned, and they could take that with them, resume builder kind of thing or something?
yeah, that sounds academic. Sure, I'll go with it.
Hey, I
More
will say
lists
it.
and things. Yeah,
I
more
don't-
lists and more things.
I don't want to blow smoke, but I will tell you that generally, after they've spent a summer with Douglas, they're pretty knowledgeable. The guys who pass through your program, somehow, Dan, you do pound some knowledge into them. So
Well, I guess growth is if they come there and they can only drink 2 beers, but when they leave, they can drink 8. Still function. I think that's growth.
What if they show up being able to drink 8? What do they drink when they leave? 16?
And then we spend some time in AA.
Okay. Let's shift focus and go to Curtis. Curtis is the superintendent at Desert Highlands, right? That's the name of the club, the new club?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Curtis is unique in terms of me. Like, we've kind of followed each other around from Maryland to Connecticut and did time at golf courses in Arizona. But Curtis has had students with me since probably 2011, maybe even a year earlier, leading up to the Ryder Cup. And I found his internship program to be one of the best. I mean, it's kind of like a no-mo internship, depending on who the student is. But Curtis, why don't you talk a little bit about, how you formulated your internship over the years and how you go about recruiting, and maybe Jack, you can chime in. Jack's one of my students in the golf course turfgrass management program who's interning with Curtis now.
Yeah, sure. It's been a really rewarding part of my career. I've enjoyed that aspect, and to be able to participate in having interns each year. And thanks to John and others, we've had a good program, a good run at Medina there for 10 years, and some few in some other places as well. But, when I went through the program at Penn State and I interned at Cherry Hills in Denver, I had a really great experience. There was only 3 of us there. And when I was looking for internships, there were places to go, a lot of big name places. And, you were going to be one of a bunch of people. Well, in mine, I was, again, just one of 3, and I got a lot of attention. And I thought it was just really, very rewarding and educational. And so as I moved on and started to host interns myself, I wanted to make sure that we always focused on having a small class. So at Medina, with 3 golf courses, we never took more than 4, with the exception of the Ryder Cup year, we took 6. And so we were always between 2 and 4 a year, so that we could really centralize our effort towards that student and make sure that they got what they were looking to get, B, meet the requirements of their program, but also we could teach them things that we felt were important. And from our end, it was all about kind of some more direct insight into the managerial side of things. And instead of, hey, go out there and just hump and work hard and, do all kinds of manual labor, we tried to include them in decision making, let them sit in on all the meetings, see what's going on behind the scenes, give them managerial task and team and project oversight. And, as it related to actual activities, we focused more on the more skilled things like chemical fertilizer application, calibration, record keeping, irrigation repair, and so forth. And, what happened was the word of mouth started to work for us, that students would go back and say, hey, I had this great experience, I got to do all this. And so we started getting a lot of interest, and the momentum just continued. And, it was great. And now I've shifted to an 18-hole facility in Scottsdale, and we've got a lot of great things to learn out here. We also have a lot of sports turf around us, like you were asking, John. We've got all the spring training, and we've got a major league team, NFL team. So I think there's unique opportunities to try to provide year-round opportunities in cooperation with some of our sports turf colleagues, and be able to attract them, because the housing is definitely the key. I know at the Penn State program, if you're not offering housing or significant enough compensation, you're just going to get beat by a lot of great places, because there's a lot of great programs out there and a lot of great names and people leading them, and there's no reason for them to come to you, because you have to compete against all that, and you have to have housing. I found to do that, and so we're trying to put it together. We've got Jack Daly with us this year. We really lucked out kind of last minute. I was popping by State College, and John had me talk with his second year students about construction, and I was staying over, and he said, hey, how about coming to the first years tomorrow about the interns? And so I did, and Jack was in the class, and he hadn't nailed anything down, so we were able to work something out and get him out here. And he has family out here, and so that's how we kind of circumvented the housing situation with Jack. But in terms of what we're doing with him this year, he basically is part of the management team. He's scheduled that way. He's engaged in a lot of oversight and so forth, along with very specific projects. So, a good thing about Jack, as well as most of the guys that start to apply to us, is that if you're really new to turf, you haven't worked at a club or really had a couple years under your belt, our internship might be a little much for you. Not that we wouldn't take you and customize one for you, but obviously we need somebody with a little bit of time under their belt to be able to jump in and do these kind of things. So, and our goal is that just like Dan's, when they finish, they look back on the time and go, wow, I'm a totally different turf manager. I've grown and I've learned a lot. That's the primary goal.
Jack, I haven't seen you in a few months. How's it going out there?
It's going really well. It's going better than I could have ever imagined it, honestly.
And not to talk about, what the things you're doing out there, but what were some of the things you were looking for when it came to an internship, as a student in the 2-year program? And Austin, we'll talk about you too in a few minutes. But what were things that you were looking for? I get the question all the time, like, how do I attract the student? And you have to fight for them. So what were the things that you looked at either on TurfNet or GCSA or in any of the advertisements we had? I mean, what attracts a student to a club?
I think it just has to be a good fit for that particular student. I heard from around that going to work for Curtis, if you have that experience and you don't need to learn how to mow and you don't need to learn how to drag hose and you don't need to learn how to do all that stuff. So with me having quite a bit of experience already prior to, especially being in the same area, because most of the courses that I worked at prior to going to the program were right on this little 5-mile stretch of Pima Road. So that was kind of one of the big things for me.
But Curtis found out about getting the job like the day before that he had your class, and then he told the class, I think Luke asked him, like, you said you had an announcement, but can you say it? And when he told everybody that he took a new job, then you kind of like perked up, but you had already been looking at a couple other clubs. So what was it maybe that you saw in those clubs? I don't even remember which ones they were.
Well, I was planning on going down. My other choice was a club in Charlotte, North Carolina. And as soon as this opportunity opened up, I just, working for somebody like Curtis and being the only intern as opposed to being one of 4, being one of 5 and stuff like that. That was definitely another big thing that pushed me this way.
Ben, I know you've been sitting back watching and you're going to go play some golf here shortly. When you were, no golf, working hard. And you're muted, but when you were running the program at Delhi and you were placing all of those students, what were they looking for? What were you looking for them?
Yeah, I think the solo intern is a big one that popped up. So my time in New York was 2009 to 14. So not a whole lot has changed. I don't feel like a whole lot has changed. Occasionally, and at that time the program was probably 50 students. So maybe 10% of them were attracted to that slightly higher pay, which I always thought was interesting. So it could be, $1 more per hour and stuff like that. And you still will see that. I think a big attraction you know, and which is kind of contentious within the industry is, you know, some students are attracted to a name, a facility that's hosting a big event. So in the golf world, you know, if you're hosting the US Open, you usually get interns. I think that's the worst time to go. I think if you were really kind of mapping out your career and you wanted that tournament experience, you should probably look to the future. What are they going to have it in 2 years or 3 years so that you become an intern in the year where it's not chaotic and everyone's running around to get things in place and grandstands are going up and you're, you know, and you can't blame the facility managers who don't have the time to devote to your growth and your education. So I would also say the demand hasn't changed either since that, you know, in the 11 years since. So I do think interns are still in the driver's seat as far as choice. What I do see different nowadays is I think people are getting creative, and even in places that have a lot of interns from one year to the next, have really stepped their games up in what they're offering. So that you see a lot more mentorship programs, bonuses, stuff like that, at least in the golf world. Sports turf, I would agree with Andy. I think sports turf has come a long way in that time. And where when I started in New York in 2009, maybe 10% of the population there was doing sports turf. I would include facilities in that as well. You know, I don't know. I'd say in just my advisees at Penn State, I'd say it's about 50-50. So those are kind of the big changes. As far as what students are looking for, I don't know if that's changed a whole lot in that time.
I think at least in the 2-year program, this is 11 and a half years. And I would say 80% of the students that came to the 2-year program, which is a golf turf management program, right? They were like, I want to host a US Open. 80%, like they were just that. And as you know, far back as 11 years ago. And now it's like, you might get one or two that say they want to do that. It's like work-life balance. I want to have a family. I want to, you know, and I think that's a generational thing. Most of them are doing it. And I think because of that, and because there's fewer students for both sports, turf, golf, and every other intern, you either have to adapt to that and realize like you're going to have to not work them 100 hours a week if they're not going to be able to take that, or you just don't get interns. So like, for instance, I did my first second or third internship visit someday this week via Zoom, one of these stupid things. And the kid was like, oh yeah, like I don't usually get off, but I got a couple days off. This is my weekend. And he said, I'm going back to Baltimore. He's flying home to go to Baltimore to spend time with his family. And I was like, well, you're just going to do that for the weekend? They're like, no, they gave me 6 days off. It's almost July. And they gave him 6 days off to, because their mentality at that club, I think in Shady Canyon in California, was they want to keep their employees happy and not burnt out. And he said they used to in other years, they take them to baseball games and they'd go out for, you know, picnics or to the bars or, you know, do things, and they can't do it this year. So they're trying to adapt. And in this case, they gave him some time off, which is to me unheard of. Like to get a week off in the middle of the summer is like crazy to me. Dan or Curtis, do you guys do anything like that? I mean, do you accommodate and adapt to
Well, you know, there's always a fine line between a picnic and the bar. You know, I mean, those are, I don't know how you come up with those two choices. But no, you know, we try to. We set our schedule monthly. So I ask our interns to, you know, provide what their requests are. So if they've got things they've got to do, they want to do, you know, they've got a advance notice they can give us, and we try to schedule it in that way. And then that way they get the time that they need. And then when they're here, it's pretty much open to close, you know.
That's kind of changed over the years too. It's the last couple of years I've had, well, mom and dad are going on vacation. They want me to go with them on these dates. And I look and it's a 7-game homestand or something. And I was like, I get you for this small window of a long season that you want to go. So, all right, you can go, but you're not getting paid that week. You know, so it's one of those, but no, we work around that kind of stuff the best we can.
Yeah. And I mean, I worked at some like when I interned, the second internship I did at Congressional during the year of the US Open, like there is 0% chance in hell I would have ever asked him for a day off at all. I remember it was like the Caps must have been playing in the playoffs or something late into the season that year. And I had tickets to like a Friday night game at like 7:30, and we were still out there dragging hose. And I was like too scared to ask him, like, I got tickets to a game, I'm going. And so I missed it. My mom and sister went with somebody else. I think that has definitely changed. I think you've seen a shift, and I think that's for the better. I mean, I don't know. The life doesn't have to revolve around the sports facility. There's times when things are busy and you should be there, and there's times where it's a little downturn. Austin, I'm getting to you now. So Austin, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but you had an unusual internship, non-traditional, I would say, compared to what most kids do when they're at school. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and that?
Yeah, I appreciate you letting me join, John. So my name is Austin Marsteller. I graduated from the four-year turf program in 2015. And prior to graduating that summer, I did an internship with Dow AgroSciences, which is now Corteva. So I was with a manufacturer of obviously turf products in the industry. And I think, reflecting back as I was going through school, we talked about the sports turf perspective. We talked about the golf perspective, and I really never looked at, whether it be a distributor rep role or a manufacturer rep role as a possibility. And I had a friend who went and worked for Dow that graduated a couple of years before me. And he said, hey, we're offering, our T&O business is offering internships. Why don't you go talk to the recruiter when they come to the Penn State campus at the Bryce Jordan Center? Dow, now Corteva AgroSciences, recruits for ag, a whole bunch of their different business divisions. So went and talked and, said I was a turf and ornamental student. And they said that they had turf and ornamental internships available, applied, interviewed, and got accepted. So it was, needless to say, it was something I didn't expect or expect to be doing right now. I was more passionate about the lawn care side of the business, and I would have never expected to be sitting in the shoes that I am today. But it was a really unique opportunity. Got to spend a lot of time kind of traveling the country, and really was tasked with a lot of, focusing on marketing and sales. And there's a lot of opportunity, with all the manufacturers. And I think what I like about my current role, so I'm the territory manager up in New England, so I cover New York to Maine. I think what I like about my current role right now, as a turf student, is the ability to, really work with distribution, really represent products, help that superintendent find a solution. Sometimes it's not one of my products, sometimes it's a competitor's products, but, in general, we're all in this together. So whatever helps the superintendent, sports turf manager, lawn care operator out is what it's all about. But I think it's just neat that, one day I can be on a golf course, next day I can be talking to a lawn care operator, and the next day I can be, standing in the middle of Yankee Stadium. So I think while you're not working intensively in each of one of those all the time, you get to kind of touch and feel each one of the turf industries in general. So definitely would consider it. I know it's kind of, as John mentioned, not the norm, but I've been very happy with my decision. And you're still very well connected to the industry. I see John, I see Ben McGraw at all kinds of events, and it's kind of fun to catch up with those.
Austin, I was trying to think, did you do your internship with Dow prior to going to the golf industry show? I think you must have, right?
So I was at the golf industry. So I interned with them in between my junior and senior year. I graduated a semester early, so I was not eligible to. My senior year, I was not eligible to go because I had already graduated.
All right, so you had gone to the show. The reason I was thinking is like when we have the opportunity to take students to like the STMA annual show or the GIS, it's kind of like the first exposure that our students who are either hardcore sports or hardcore golf are opened up to these other possibilities of working for these, support services or agrochemical companies. So, and that's, I don't know how you get around that, because most of our students come to us when they're juniors and juniors from branch campuses and whatnot. But that's a really good event, or a couple of events that really kind of open your eyes up to maybe you're not. Maybe there's something in the golf or sports industry that's not necessarily being a turf manager.
Yeah, and I think that's why I got Devin and even other undergraduates involved in our research program. And Pete, you have Paige, I think, is working for you to expose them to the other things. And those are not internships, but those are things they can do while they're working at as a student. But it's really hard to expose them to these other areas. And that's why I think, Austin, for you to do that, it's awesome. How many jobs, you got your Bachelor of Science degree? It seems like a lot of those companies would hire more, master's students or people that have R&D. How many people are, Bachelor of Science are working with you? And is there any push for you to go back and get an advanced degree or anything?
Yeah. So now when you look at our team of 13 territory managers across the country for Corteva, there is only one that has his MBA. Everybody else has their bachelor. So there's really no pressure to get an advanced degree, whether it be a master's, whether it's a PhD in agronomy or any of that. We've got even reps and territory managers that didn't come from a agronomic degree at all. Some of them actually came from, agricultural business majors, marketing majors, the whole 9 yards. So, don't think just because it's a manufacturer job that you're going to be doing R&D work. We have R&D scientists that are particularly doing that work. Your job, kind of in my role, is to really work with distribution and really be the face to the customers in your local market for the products that you represent. So now, kind of answer John, there's no pressure. Even in my current position, there's no pressure to get an advanced degree. That would be of your choice. But if you do, you look at a lot of these manufacturers, and Corteva is actually one of them. The opportunity, if you do want to go back to school, to pay for your advanced degree. So there's some other benefits such as that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So for anybody, I was going to ask, how often or how common is it that where you do your internship, where the interns have gone to, how common is it for them to then get hired by those companies? Ben or Curtis or Dan or Andy or anybody that knows. I mean, how common is that? It seems like it's fairly common, but I didn't know from your perspective.
I will say, in general, in our baseball franchise, we always like to hire within. And I think over 25 full-time staff, something like 17 had interned with us at one point or the other in the last 30 years. Now, doesn't happen so much on the ground side of that, because the guy in charge has been there 30 years and it doesn't look like he's leaving yet. So, but yeah, I think it's somewhat important, but we also, some of this conversation touched on some things I was thinking about my own kids that went through Penn State. It's just like some of my better interns were taken out of their comfort zone. Maybe they were football guys and tried baseball, and maybe there were golf guys and tried baseball, whatever. But it just seems like that when you're 20, 21, you don't really know what you want yet, but you might learn that you want to do this or don't want to do that. So sometimes when you start on a golf course at 16 with a weed eater, maybe you should try something else when it's time to be an intern. Maybe you do get into sales, but how many times people, especially kids, shift majors. Maybe, I don't know how you guys advise kids, but maybe the guy that's been on a golf course all the time should be somewhere else, or vice versa. Does that make sense or no?
Sure, it makes sense. The deal is, though, the famous saying is, what can't you make a 20-year-old 30? And it doesn't matter how hard you try, they're still 20. And so some of them, are ambitious and they're willing to get out of their comfort zone, but to me, it's a constant challenge to just sort of pry them and push them and say, yes, you can fly across the country and intern someplace that you're not familiar. And I get it. They're young, and that's part of our job, is to try to get them out there and get exposed to the world and get exposed to something different. So if your question was, do we try to lock them in when they're freshmen into, hey, I want to go golf and that's all they're going to do the rest of their life. Some of them choose to do that, but no, I tell them, hey, when you're young, this is a good chance to, hey, you spend a fall 8 hours a week working at the Beaver Stadium grounds crew. See if you like that. And if you're a sports turf guy, you know, go work 8 hours a week at the Penn State golf courses. Go out to the Valentine Research Center and get some experience and try some things when you're young so that you know. But, you know, they seem to be focused. The reason they got into turf was they had a goal, and they've only been in it a year or two. So it's hard for them to sort of think about switching that goal because they haven't really explored the goal yet. So it's a challenge.
So actually, one summer we sent 2 to the Brewers, and one of them ended up working inside the stadium, and the other one actually ended up being the horticulturalist on the outside of the stadium. The one that was the horticulturalist ended up staying, and the other one then moved on to the Lake County Captains. And it seems like oftentimes what happens, at least with internships, it almost turns into like the MLB draft is the the heads, the turf managers start talking. It's like, well, who do you have? Well, I've got this person. Well, are they going to be ready? That kind of a thing. So it's almost like it's like a draft, and they kind of shift around the country that way as well.
The students should know that they talk constantly. So inside the NFL, they're talking about how that kid is, how this kid is, and it gives them, it's a small industry and everybody knows each other, and you need to realize that at a young age.
Yep.
We have a question that somebody asked early on, Anthony, who comes to a lot of these. He said, what should interns try to push to learn while at a sports facility or a golf course? What do you expect out of an intern, and what should an intern expect out of an internship? So a lot there in that, but maybe Curtis, maybe you could start, and Dan and Andy or anybody else can comment too.
Well, before the student arrives, I always tell them to make sure they're prepared to tell me what it is they want to learn. So I mean, definitely have some idea of what you're there to do, and then let's talk about how that applies to what you're going to be doing at our facility. And so, what I expect them to learn is the basic fundamentals of our team's offense, if you will. I want them to learn what's important to us, what we're looking for as managers, from writing the schedule to executing the day to long-term agronomy, and then even different projects and stuff. So I expect them to have a piece of that, when they come through. And, while I've got the floor just for a second on that last question, we really try to hire our interns back. At Medina, we had an 8-man managerial team, including myself. And at any given time, we were somewhere between 4 and 6 of those guys started as interns with us and came back. That let us knew we were doing something right, but plus they were already skilled as they came up through. So it's something that we focus on. We're doing that here at Desert Highlands too. So it's definitely a place where we're looking for our future teammates as well. But back to Anthony's question, be prepared to communicate. Don't show up and expect to get it handed to you on a plate. It's an integrated thing. You got to communicate. You got to engage your supervisor, and it's got to be interactive. Otherwise, you'll get passed by. The business is just too fast to sit there and hope you're learning. There's got to be a specific plan that you're a part of.
Curtis, does that help them from, I guess, end up breaking bunkers all summer kind of a thing? At least if they're willing to just share what their expectations are? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. If they show up and they've got some specific things, we're going to do everything we can to make sure they hit all of them. If they don't, they might end up getting, thrown out to the bunkers all summer. That would be an unsuccessful internship, in my opinion, and theirs too, probably. But I tell everybody, it's a quote from a Duke basketball article I read once where it said, "Here you talk or you don't play," and that's very true about our program. Like, you got to be engaged, you got to be willing to participate. There's no wrong or dumb question. We just want the dialogue. And that's how we work together to get, our best product out there. And we expect that the students to jump right in on that.
I will say my approach, and that's probably why I couldn't come up with a good answer for Brad's checklist question, is probably a little more subtle, maybe a little more old school. And when they get to the end, they say, "Oh my God, I didn't realize I'd learned that much." I certainly try to point things out that they should have seen in a textbook. That might be a situation that, here's the real world. I have a more subtle approach to giving them increased responsibility to the point where they didn't even know that they were getting increased responsibility. I was throwing them into situations to see if they could handle them or if they couldn't handle them. And when they come out the other side, the good ones got something out of it, more than just a grade. So I can't quantify any of that, but there's a lot of guys out there in society right now that influenced me, good or bad, whatever their opinion is. I'm pretty proud of all of them. So.
Should be.
I can add something to that, Dan. I was privileged enough to be a part of the internship program, both after the fact when students come back to Penn State and they actually do their senior seminar, as you used to call it when you were here. And I got to learn a lot about the students and what they really did learn. And it was surprising to me to just see how in-depth their internship was for a lot of places. And if they applied themselves, they could learn a lot. The big thing is, you have to apply yourself.
So one thing that piqued my attention, because we all do it, we all say, my guys, how many have had diverse crews? I mean, how many female interns have you had, or employees have you had? It seems like I know it's not everybody is going to love working on a golf course or a sports field, but it seems like when we have such a shortage of students that, the women in turf, as they are tagging themselves on Twitter, seem to be growing. At least vocally we hear more about them. How many women have actually approached you about working at your places?
And anyone, I can jump in. I've had a number of female interns over the years. They've all been great. One wrote me a wonderful letter saying, really appreciate the experience. I hated it and never wanted to do sports turf, but I appreciate everything else that you taught me. So that's good.
Valuable too, though. That's really valuable.
She wasn't.
I just had a student. She worked on a golf course, and it was a good golf course, good internship. She just didn't like it.
Right.
And good. Now you know.
Right. And she was appreciative of that. But I mean, it's funny with an intern back in the late 90s who I just called the other day because her and her husband, another Penn Stater, have a very successful landscaping business. And I want to do some work around my house and gave him a call. So, all goes one big circle. So it turns out, don't try to get a contractor or a landscaper during the pandemic. They're very busy and they can't come to your house. Take that home.
Good advice.
We haven't had many at all. In fact, we've had a few staff members, but no interns all these years.
Well, looking at the numbers in our program, I can't comment about the World Campus, but I think how many do we have in the BS program right now, Andy? I mean, Paige just graduated.
Yeah, so there's.
I don't think that number changes very much. We get one or two.
One or two. That's what it usually works out to be.
In John's program, I haven't seen a woman for a couple of years now in that program.
Well, we had Christine that just graduated.
That's right, Christine.
We had two when I got here. This is how bad it is that I can count them by year. There's maybe 4 or 5 in 11 years.
So it explains why we don't have many not many internships.
Yeah, and I went to Shinnecock last year, I guess. I was just in the area visiting another student. I stopped in to see John, and he had like 6 or 7 employees that were women he was really pushing them to, he's going to send them to UMass's short course in the winter to learn more. He bought them all textbooks and encouraged them to read and learn, and they're enthusiastic about it. They love it. You know, like I think that they're getting into it. I think we're shifting into, and I don't want to say it in a weird way, like we're shifting from that mentality of you must work 100 hours a week and never take a day off, and you're never going to have anything to do but this job, which most people now don't want it. But maybe we're getting more into an area where like it's okay to like have time off, and it's okay to mix up your crew some, and maybe that's pulling more women into it because they're feeling more welcomed. I can't imagine being the only woman on a 20-person male crew of golf course turf managers. Yeah, I can't imagine that. So like you have to like include them somehow and want to, and I don't know how to do that, but it seems like it's getting better, so that's good.
Christine was actually really good to work with too. She actually helped me rebuild that field controller behind me, kind of just in her spare time while we were doing irrigation class, and so that one needed to be rebuilt. So she kind of took it upon herself to just take that as kind of a little personal project, keep herself occupied. So
awesome.
Pete, to answer your question, I will tell you that we have 800% more females in the World Campus program as we do our resident.
Yeah, the World Campus program is different, and most of those are working on a golf course or a sports turf field. 800%.
Which means we have 8.
Yeah, I know,
right.
I know, but still, that's something. That's something.
Hey, those percentages, I've just sent a question about some numbers, and it was like, we've increased this by 16%. And I'm like, does that mean from like 6 to 7 people, right? Like, yeah. We did have a question though. Kennedy Ellis, who's a high school student who works in or lives in Michigan, and is going to play golf at, I can't remember the name of the university, but she's really into wanting to come to Penn State for her undergraduate degree. And she said she'd like to know more about on-campus internships, specifically at Valentine. What are you looking for, and what else, and what can I do in advance to prepare?
So I'm not clear. Was the question that because of playing golf, there's a requirement that she would need to stay on campus for summer? Because if she's an athlete?
No, I think that she's like really into science, and she already knows she wants to get a master's in PhD.
Oh, I see. So research.
She's looking at what is available in terms of internships at like research facilities like Valentine.
Well, I think you, Ben, and Pete can handle that question better than me. I misunderstood the question.
Yeah. Ben ditched out. Pete, you can chime in if you want.
What was the question?
I'll take the question. The question was, what opportunities are there for internships while on campus? So say a student comes to Penn State.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, internships, there are three, maybe even 4 possibilities. One is work with the Beaver Stadium crew. And now I don't know, when Herb was overseeing the internships, he had some students do special projects that were rather interesting. That I don't know some of the specifics of that, but that's one option. The other one is to work with Matt Neary at the Spikes Stadium. You're going to get some pretty good experience there, but I think it'd be better just to work during the school year there and then go someplace else for an internship. Maybe that would be
I think
better.
The question was about research opportunities for a research internship. Am I wrong?
I think you're more on point. I think this particular student is looking at like, if I come there as an undergraduate, where are the opportunities that I can get involved in research? Obviously, Valentine has general maintenance positions if you need to learn to mow and do things like that.
Yeah,
but then I was going to say from there, you would advance to work with a specific PI on a project or something.
Right.
You guys have both done that. Yeah,
Work with the
Pete,
research.
you and John have done research internships.
Internships?
Just call them work study. It doesn't matter.
Austin did a work study with me on a infiltration project during the school year. It's more like a 596 type project, right? Or it's just a special project. I wouldn't call it an internship though. You can get 3 credits for it if you work enough. So
Yeah, I don't think that, I think that to her, an internship is just getting work experience. And I think it's more like, what are the opportunities to get
I think
involved in research?
Ben has done a really good job. Like he took on Nate Livey. When Nate came here, Nate was a really good student, still is. And he wanted to do research right away. I mean, he was very motivated. He wanted to look into that. So he worked in Ben's lab, and he ended up being a master's student for Max. We can certainly point students in a direction, and they could do a research internship. There's no reason why they couldn't. In fact, when Paige was doing her internship with Land O'Lakes, she did a fair amount of research in the lab on that. They gave her some projects to do research. So you could probably work something out with a company to do some side projects. Austin, I don't know if you ever did any trials with Dow when you were working with them during your internship.
You're muted, Austin.
Muted here. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, as far as like, you can actually, so there's like the difference between like the marketing internships versus R&D, but I mean, yeah, you could be positioned even with a turf R&D as an intern. That is a possibility that you work alongside those. But yeah, as far as like doing plots, I mean, in my role, I'm usually always putting out plots and kind of doing my own experiments, so to say, just to keep up on everything and try to find a new edge. So it definitely is a possibility, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, I hire undergraduates all the time, and whether they're turf students or not, I've got 2 undergraduates now, one working in hemp and one who's not in turf, but just wants research experience. So I know Ben's lab and my lab and, Andy, you.
I think you can get most of the experience that you want during the regular year. And if you want to stay around for the summer, that's always an option. People are looking for research technicians all the time. And you could just easily convert that into an internship, no problem. Somebody give you.
I think we're getting hung up on semantics. I mean, the point is that there's opportunities in many, if not all, PI's labs to get research experience. Maybe it's not an official internship, but they're going to get experience. There's something else that we should make aware, that when you look at our curriculum, we also have one that's really not published. You come into us as a freshman and say, listen, I want to take a research track. There's a completely different, not completely different, but there's a little bit different track where there's less business and more science classes taken to prepare you for graduate school, et cetera. So if somebody has that as their goal and they come in as a freshman, we can advise them that there are course substitutions. They'll still graduate, but it'll set them up even better for graduate school.
We have that, Andy, but how many students have actually taken advantage of that?
Probably 3 in my career.
Okay.
Mostly because they don't get interested in research till they're seniors.
That's it.
The person asking the question seems interested in that. So as a freshman,
yeah.
Well, actually, I think I can clarify a little bit because I kind of misspoke at the beginning. She is going to a small college in Michigan to do her undergraduate degree because she's going to play golf for them. And she worked with Kevin Frank a little bit, I think, in Michigan State to do some research plots with them. So she's trying to figure out I know I want to go for turf and do a master's and then a PhD, but I'm going to a small college. I think it's like an environmental science degree that she's going to get. What can I do to prepare to then come and work in somebody's lab as a master's student or, maybe on as a PhD. She's so far ahead of everybody in terms of her planning and preparation that she just eats up more. She wants more. So she's ahead of the curve. But I would imagine in about 4 years, she's going to be looking at, Andy or Max. I think she's interested in soils. And Andy, maybe you will or will not be here by that point, but.
Yeah. But my advice would be, take a lot of hard sciences and statistics classes, but really just get a good, strong foundation in basic science. And we will take master's people that have great science background and no turf background, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that would be my advice.
Okay. We're in for an hour, maybe a couple minutes over. Why don't we give everybody the opportunity? First, let me thank everybody. Curtis, Austin, Dan, Jack, all the faculty in here, and Ben, for coming and spending an hour of your time tonight. But I'm going to basically just go around and let everybody say final words, maybe like, your, best advice to somebody seeking an internship or looking for an internship. I'll call it out in the order that I see you on my screen, starting with you, Andy, in the bottom right.
Just there's a lot of opportunity out there. Don't be afraid to take risk, and just get to know as many people as, I mean, one of the big things that's an advantage of Penn State is the size of our turf network. And the quicker you can tap into that network, the more that you'll be informed as to, making the best decisions as to where to go with your internship. So tap into that network as early as you can.
All right, Jack.
I think my biggest thing is don't go for a name or for a particular place. Go try to find somewhere that is really going to help you grow as a turf grass manager.
Good. That leads us to you, Curtis.
Yeah, I think, well, thanks for putting this together, John. I appreciate it. And, I would say, do some research, work at finding the right spot. And don't be afraid to branch out, of your comfort zone when doing that.
Pete.
I just concur with Curtis and Jack. Do some homework. Don't necessarily go for the big name club. It seems to be the trend right now. There are some big name clubs and organizations that do provide good internships, but I think it's more about finding the right fit for you. And that involves doing a little bit of homework, asking other students, asking professors, so forth.
Great. Dan.
Yeah, I was trying to find something inspirational to say, but right now I have no idea what the sports landscape is going to look like next year. I know, assuming we play baseball, professional baseball again next April, we'll be going 18 months without income. So how much are we going to spend on interns and other staff and that kind of stuff? I don't know. I hope to get back to reality, get back to a normal at some point. But yeah, again, it's just like, use the network. Network's unbelievable. I mean, my kids went through Penn State, and I said, use the network. And they're in jobs now they love, but didn't start out thinking that 3-4 years ago. So connections. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We do that. Our alumni tend to do that well and tend to support the current students, and that's that cycle. Austin, you're up.
Yeah, I would say for me, just from a former student's perspective, looking at an internship and reflecting back is don't just treat it as a summer job. Don't get caught up in that. You're there to do more than just a summer job and earn some money to spend the next semester at, the bar or whatever it may be. You're really there trying to learn something, and you should walk away from it. And you never know where opportunities and people you meet, as Andy had mentioned, it's a small network, even though it's a pretty large industry. And it's just always good to have those connections.
Great. Brad?
I'm thinking at this point, don't be afraid to do more than one internship. Multiple internships is good. Multiple experience is good. Have a list of skills or expectations that you have for that, and really try to just bolster that as best you can.
Jeff, you're muted.
How about that? Now we're on. Diversify. Brad just said it with eloquence. Diversify, man. Keep your options open. Do more than one internship. They don't have to be a year long. They don't have to be 6 months long. So try something for a month. If you don't like it, try something else. Obviously, you want to be not jumping around from job to job. I'm not saying that, but like if you're at school at Penn State, try something, a little bit of work while you're in classes. Say, I don't like working at Beaver Stadium. I don't like working at the Blue Golf Course. Whatever. I do like it. I don't like it. And talk to your peers as well as the rest of the industry. Students in front of you have had lots of experiences, good and bad, I'm sure. I hear them. So diversify.
Great. I think those are all good pieces of advice. I think that it really comes down to realizing what you don't have under your belt, right? So if you know that you want to do something in turf, maybe you want to learn construction, or maybe you want to do sports turf or golf, and then continue to build on that. Every time you do something, you learn more, then find out what you are missing still, and then try and go after that. And it can be in any, area. And I agree, diversify multiple internships, and do everything you can to find a mentor. Like, find somebody that's going to help you along the way. And that network is big, but having somebody like Curtis or a Dan or even a faculty member that will, really put the extra time in is huge. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for watching another episode, and all of you that came, I appreciate it. We got to stop doing these on Thursdays because that's my gym night. I need them on Wednesdays so I can actually have a pint of beer in my hand when we're going through these. But thanks again, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.